Across America, BP supports more than 275,000 jobs to keep energy flowing. Jobs like building grid-scale solar energy in Ohio and producing gas with fewer operational emissions in Texas. It's and, not or. See what doing both means for energy nationwide at bp.com/investing in America.
Ophthalmologist Dr. Strauss has seen firsthand how the metaverse is helping surgeons practice the procedures to treat cataracts.
Cataracts are the primary cause of avoidable blindness.
He works with a virtual reality training platform developed by Fundamental VR and Orbis International to help surgeons develop the muscle memory they need. The result? More confident, capable surgeons. And even more importantly,
Patients who can see.
explore more stories like Dr. Strauss's at meta.com/metaverseimpact.
I'm your host, Annie Bowles, and this is News du Jour. Welcome to News du Jour. You may be wondering, why am I, Annie Bowles, here hosting this podcast? I usually start by telling people I'm a political baby. You see, my parents met working on Capitol Hill. By the time I was 2, I had been in my first political commercial and even got lost crawling around the West Wing. Don't worry, Al Gore found me. My family then moved abroad when I was 9, and I attended an international school in Brussels with kids from all over the world. And it is this type of global perspective that I also bring to our show. I graduated from American University in DC after studying political science and art history, as well as interning on both sides of Capitol Hill. I even interned down the hall from where my parents met. I'm now pursuing a professional certificate in journalism at NYU in conjunction with Rolling Stone magazine. I guess I was always that friend in the group who cared deeply about not just what was going on politically, but also globally. I often kept my own friends informed through high school and into young adulthood, so I guess I've always done a version of this show. I'm genuinely passionate about following the news, and I'm here to break it down for you guys every weekday. We always strive to be a calmer space to get your news. Or, as one listener put it, like getting your news from a well-informed bestie. I'm so glad you're here. Hey everyone, welcome back to the News du Jour. I am hoping that this week will be a little bit more normal than last week, but bear with us as we have been experiencing some technical difficulties with our hosting platform. Again, hopefully everything goes according to plan. I have 3 mini stories for you guys. All seem to be medical related, which is just interesting and totally random. We also are going to cover the earthquake that happened in Manhattan, the solar eclipse today, and then a bunch of Israel and Gaza updates. Let's jump in. So like I said, our 3 mini stories for today are all going to be medical related stories. Let's jump into our first one. I wanted to give you guys an update on the pig transplant. So the patient has left the hospital for home. This is so exciting. Just the fact that he was doing well enough to be discharged after 2 weeks is absolutely incredible. We can only hope that this will lead to lifelong health for him and a major medical breakthrough. For our second mini story, Ozempic and similar medications that are on the market are actually showing signs of slowing Parkinson's disease, you guys, which is also a very exciting breakthrough, even though it's far from a cure and it's even, not slowing the progression very much. It could still give researchers clues as to what might help in a bigger way. It's hope. Stay tuned. And speaking of medicine, We are seeing an unlikely alliance forming between President Biden and Bernie Sanders. The two have been at odds a lot over the past few years, but they've actually joined forces to advocate for lower drug costs, something they've both wanted for Americans for many years. Biden even credited Bernie for laying out a plan that his administration is now using as their own blueprint. We'll definitely keep you guys posted on their progress. I think this is something we all want. And in our first longer story for today, I wanted to cover the earthquake in Manhattan. So this is something pretty new, an earthquake felt by humans in Manhattan. You see, according to experts, many earthquakes happen throughout the year in the tri-state area, only they're too small to be felt or really noticed by human beings. But this earthquake was a different story. The epicenter of the quake was over in New Jersey, about 40 miles away from Manhattan. But the quake was such a big one, people definitely felt it in the city. The earthquake hit at 10:23 a.m. and was a magnitude of 4.8. Fortunately, there was no major damage. It just scared people more than anything else. It did cause airports to temporarily shut down. Luckily, New York City has added earthquake safety provisions to its building code back in 1995, according to the New York Times. So that's why a lot of these buildings were without any damage. But there's no doubt that these earthquakes are increasing in strength in this area. But so far, New York is standing up to that strength. And thank goodness. However, over in Taiwan, people remain trapped under the rubble. Rescuers are currently working to save an estimated 600 people, you guys, who are stranded, according to The Guardian. Heavy working equipment has been brought in, especially in these sort of mountainous rural areas where people had been hiking. And with the rescue efforts, the death toll has unfortunately risen a bit from 9 to 13, according to CNN. This whole event was so tragic, and I am personally praying for anybody who is still in that rubble. It has to be so terrifying. Godspeed to these rescuers. And lastly, in our sort of climate related stories for today, I wanted to touch on the solar eclipse. So in case you guys somehow hadn't heard, there is this solar eclipse happening today. If you don't live in OKC, you'll have to look up the times and percentages in your own area, but a simple Google search will tell you when and exactly all the details. But OKC is going to experience a 93% partial eclipse at 1:45 p.m., according to Fox Weather. Basically, what will happen in this eclipse is that the moon will move across the sun, blocking most or all of its light for a few minutes. As I understand it, though, the biggest thing is not to look at the sun unless you have the special eclipse glasses that will protect your eyes properly. These can be picked up at local libraries for free, and I've seen actually a few small businesses handing them out as well. It can be scary for certain people and pets, obviously, because all of a sudden the sky is going to go dark out of nowhere. This is a once-in-a-lifetime celestial event, though, and I am excited that OKC will get to see an almost complete eclipse today. I'm definitely going to be watching with my glasses, and we'll pick back up afterwards, I guess. Everyone in the astrology world is saying how this is going to be, some huge shift in energy in the universe. I'm definitely interested to see if I feel that way myself. And next up for today, we are going to cover some more Israel-Gaza updates. I wanted to issue a content warning here. This story involves war and famine. So for our first update on this subject, Israel agreed to open another aid corridor. It's an area called the Air Crossing, and obviously this comes after Biden kind of laid down the gauntlet, allow further aid to reach helpless civilians or lose your biggest ally. And Biden didn't just say this about this specific crossing and allowing aid to flow into this specific crossing. He reportedly issued much more of a blanket, open-ended statement saying that American support, as long as he is president, will depend on how Israel treats civilians generally, both in terms of casualties and the humanitarian crisis, basically saying we've got to change our tune here or you will lose American support. And with that, the CIA director has left the United States for Cairo for peace talks. William J. Burns, the director of the CIA, has left for Egypt to further advocate for peace between Israel and Hamas, along with the release of the remaining hostages. Any negotiating, of course, will go through Egypt and Qatar, as the Israelis and Americans do not directly deal with Hamas. Reportedly, though, it can take up to 2 days, you guys, to even get proposed plans to the Hamas leadership. Supposedly, they're taking these proposals to Yahya Sinwar. He is believed to be the mastermind behind the gruesome October 7th attacks on Israel, and he is still believed to be hiding in the tunnels below Gaza, though I think it's safe to say he is probably number one enemy of the state when it comes to Israel's hunt for Hamas. And then for our final update on Israel and Gaza and our final story for today, a leafy green is becoming a lifeline in Gaza. So there is this spinach-like plant that grows in Gaza called cobeza, and it loves the rain. So it was traditional before the war to eat this plant following a rain. Now, as the New York Times put it, quote, "This leafy green has become a lifeline," end quote. As we have covered extensively on this show, Gaza is experiencing famine and extreme humanitarian crisis right now, a preventable situation where children are literally starving to death. But as they say, necessity is the mother of invention, and Gazans are forced to get creative right now in trying to simply feed their families. Families are going foraging on the side of roads to find wild cobeza, and they've said that it's supporting them more than the rest of the world is in this dark time. They're eating it in whatever way they can, sauteing it, mixing it into a soup, or even eating it plain and raw in times of utter desperation. Fortunately, this is a very nutrient-dense food, just like spinach and other leafy greens, although it's not packing enough calories for people. Historically speaking, there are actually a number of common foods and dishes around the world that were born out of desperation. American barbecue is said to have been born out of the meat scraps that slave hands were once given to work with. Budae jjigae is now a popular Korean soup that used Spam as a base and a means of survival during war times. And ironically, maybe, bagels too were born out of persecution when Jews were banned from baking bread. They boiled it instead. I think cobeza will probably have a very special meaning in Gaza forevermore after this devastating chapter. I'm glad they have it, but they obviously need a lot more aid as quickly as possible. They can't survive on cobeza alone. And that for today is the news du jour. Today, I wanted to leave you guys with the quote, "Nothing in the world is worth more than laughter. It is strength to laugh and to abandon oneself, to be light." If you enjoyed this episode, please subscribe on whatever podcast platform you use to listen. A rate and review on that platform or a shout out on social media would mean the world to us and help us to be able to keep creating the news du jour and reach more people who need a calmer space to consume the news. But the best way to support all of our work is to become a patron at www.patreon.com/sugarfree media, and that is also linked in our show notes. You can follow us on social media at newsdujour.podcast on both Instagram and TikTok. You can follow my personal account at It's Annie Bowles on both platforms as well. Any little noises you may hear in the background are my rescue pup. He has a little separation anxiety and always records with me. We appreciate you listening and look forward to telling you about the news again next time on News du Jour.
Broadcasting from
BP added more than $70 billion to the U.S. economy last year by making investments from coast to coast. Investments like building charging hubs for fleets of electric buses in California and starting up new infrastructure in the Gulf of Mexico. It's and, not or. See what doing both means for energy nationwide at bp.com/investing in America.